boys. How many times have we heard that in our lives? Hundreds of times, maybe thousands. But when we say that or shrug our shoulders and accept it when somebody else says it, we don't realize that we're helping to perpetuate a stereotype, a myth, and a harmful one at that, particularly for boys. Boys will be boys is designed to make us think that boys are naturally more aggressive and competitive and less emotional, empathic, or in need of close same-sex friendships as girls. While these gender stereotypes are true for some boys, especially as they get older, they are not naturally the case. They are, however, culturally the case. We live in a society or culture, and I'm talking about the United States, that privileges stereotypically masculine qualities over those deemed feminine. We privilege the self over relationships, thinking over feeling, mind over body, clarity over chaos. We create selfies rather than we-fees. We value getting into Harvard rather than being kind to one another. We pressure our boys to man up and deny or repress their so-called feminine qualities. Yet a core component of our nature lies in these qualities and needs. We rely on our so-called girly capacities to get what we most want and need in our lives. Those soft and gooey emotions such as empathy and sensitivity are necessary to have the kinds of relationships that we most yearn for. According to the godfather of evolution, Charles Darwin, our extraordinary ability to read each other's thoughts and feelings and to care for one another is why we have thrived as a species. Decades of research, including my own, indicate that boys, like all humans, are emotional, empathic, and want close friendships more than anything else in the world. Boys also reveal that they live in a culture that silences their nature to fit into gender straitjackets, and that such silencing can cause problems. The soaring rates of suicide and other forms of violence among boys and men are a consequence of boys being raised to go against their nature. Boys want close friendships, including with other boys, but they live in a culture that doesn't value what they most need and want. That's according to the research, but don't take my word for it. Let's listen to the boys themselves. What you're about to hear is a handful of clips from hundreds of research interviews with white, black, Latino, and Asian American boys that I've been collecting as part of my research on friendships over the past 3 decades. In my developmental studies, the same boys are interviewed each year from early to late adolescence, so I follow them through adolescence. Not only are you about to hear boys express desire for male friendships, you will also hear what happens to boys as they grow up and the expectations to man up intensify. My research reveals 3 distinct patterns. The first theme is sharing secrets in friendships. This theme is particularly evident between the ages of 12 and 15. At 15 years old, Justin says, in response to an interviewer's question about how he would describe his best friend, quote, "My best friend and I love each other. That's it. You have this thing that is deep, so deep it's within you. You can't explain it. It's just a thing that you know that that person is that person, and that is all that should be important in our friendship. I guess in life, sometimes 2 people can really, really understand each other and really have a trust, respect, and love for each other. It just happens. It's human nature," unquote. Like Justin, Hector, at 14 years old, says in response to a question about how he would describe his best friends,
"I've got 2 best friends, Willie and Brian. Like sometimes when me and Willie argue, me and Brian are real close. Then when me and Brian are not doing so good, me and Willie are real close. It's like circles of love. Sometimes we're all close."
And then there is Jason, at 15 years old. When asked about his friendship, he says,
"My ideal best friend is a close friend who I could say anything to. Because sometimes you need to spill your heart out to somebody, and if there's nobody there, then you're going to keep it inside. And then you will have anger. So you need somebody to talk to, always."
Listening to boys speak about their male friendships during early and middle adolescence is like reading an old-fashioned romance novel, where the female protagonist is describing her passionate feelings for her man. At the edge of manhood, when pressures to conform to norms of masculinity intensify, boys speak about their male friends with abandon, referring to them as people whom they love and can't live without. Set against a culture that perceives boys and men to be activity-oriented, emotionally illiterate, these stories seem shocking. The lone cowboy, the cultural icon of masculinity in the West, suggests that what boys need and want most are opportunities for autonomy and competition. Yet 85% of the boys of my studies over the past 3 decades suggest that their closest male friendships share the plot of Love Story more than the plot of The Lord of the Flies. Sharing secrets or talking intimately with best friends was how boys defined a best friend, and betrayal of this confidence was the primary cause for terminating a close friend. When asked about his best friend, Mark says in his freshman year, quote, "My best friend could just tell me anything, and I could tell him anything. Like I always know everything about him. We always chill, like we don't hide secrets from each other. We tell each other our problems," unquote. When asked to explain why he feels close to his best friend, Richard says, "If I'm having problems at home, they'll counsel me. I just trust them with anything, like deep secrets, anything." When asked to describe his closest friend, Eddie says, quote, "It's like a bond. We keep secrets. Like if there's something that's important to me, like I could tell him and he won't go and make fun of it. Like if my family is having problems or something." While boys often spoke about loving to play basketball or soccer or video games with their friends, the emphasis was always on talking together or sharing secrets or wanting to do that with a best friend. Boys, in fact, indicated that the sharing of secrets is what they liked most about their friendships. When asked what he likes most about his friend, Ken says, quote, "What I like most about my best friend is the connection. It's like, you know how you know somebody for so long, you could talk about anything, and you won't even think, oh, what are they thinking? You just talk." When asked about what he likes about his friendship, MJ says,
"Yeah, because my best friend is like a second person you could speak to. It's like, see how kids carry a little teddy bear or whatever? And when they cry, they'll hold it and stuff. So when you get upset or something, you just walk over to your best friend and he'll loosen you up, whatever. He'll be like, yeah, it's all right, even though it's not."
the content of boys' secrets range from crushes to conflicts in the home. Paul says it's good to have a best friend because, quote, "Sometimes you don't want to tell your family members because it's probably about them. And you just tell your friend and they'll keep a secret and help you." The second theme I heard, so the first theme is shared secrets. The second theme I heard in my research is the link between friendships and mental health. Boys believed that friendships were essential for their health and well-being and made this connection explicit in their interviews. When asked about whether friends are important, Stephen, a high school freshman, says, quote, "You need friends to talk to sometimes. You know, like you have nobody to talk to. You don't have a friend. It's hard. You got to keep things bottled up inside. You might just start crying or whatever." When asked the same question about his friendship, Alan says in his junior year that he needs, quote, "Someone to talk to. Like you have problems with something, you go talk to him. You know, if you keep it all to yourself, you go crazy. Try to take it out on somebody else." Another boy concurs, saying that, quote, "Without friends, you'd go crazy or mad. You'd be lonely all the time, be depressed. You'd go wacko." At 14 years old, Kai says bluntly in response to a question about whether it's important to have friends, "My friendships are important because you need a friend or else you'd be depressed. You won't be happy. You'd try to kill yourself because then you'd be all alone and no one to talk to." The boys in my studies know that their intimate friendships are critical to their mental health. And then something happens as they enter late adolescence, which leads me to my third and final theme that's evident among the hundreds of boys in my studies. The third theme, heard particularly during late adolescence, is the loss of or struggle to hold on to close male friendships. As the pressures to man up intensify, boys do in fact begin to talk less and sound more like a stereotype. Using the phrase "no homo," they begin saying that they don't have time for their close friendships, even though they continued to express strong desires for having them. Justin, who you heard 4 years earlier, says in his senior year, when asked how his friendships have changed since he was a freshman,
I don't know, maybe. Not a lot. But I guess that best friends become close friends. So that's basically the only thing that changed. It's like best friends become close friends become general friends, and then general friends become acquaintances. So they just, if there's a distance, whether it's, I don't know, natural or whatever, you can say that, but it just happens that way.
when asked about how his friendships have changed, Michael says,
Like, my friendship with my best friend is fading, but I'm saying it's still there. It's still there because we still do stuff together, but only once in a while. It's sad because he lives only 1 block away from me, and I get to do stuff with him less than I get to do stuff with people who are way further. It's like a DJ. He used his crossfader and started fading it slowly and slowly, and now I'm like halfway through the crossfade.
late adolescence for many boys is a time of disconnection from the relationships that they hold so close to their hearts. As their bodies are almost fully grown and their minds are increasingly attuned to homophobic messages about manhood, boys begin to distance themselves from the very relationships that they relied on previously to prevent them from going crazy. Boys know by late adolescence that their close male friendships and even their emotional acuity put them at risk of being labeled girly, immature, or gay. Thus, rather than focusing on who they are, they become obsessed with who they are not. They are not girls, little boys, nor in the case of heterosexual boys are they gay. In response to a culture such as ours that links close friendship with an age, young, a sex, female, and a sexuality, gay, boys mature into men who are independent, emotionally stoic, and oftentimes isolated. If you want evidence that this pattern is not just true in my studies, just watch the classic coming-of-age movie, Stand By Me, which tells the story of the loss of close friendships as boys grow up. This pattern is found especially in cultures like ours that privilege independence over friendship. The agony of having to man up in such a culture is reflected in Victor's response to my question regarding whether he has any close friends in his senior year of high school.
Not really. I think myself, the friend I had, I lost it. That was the only person that I could trust, and we talked about everything. When I was down, he used to help me feel better. The same I did to him. So I feel pretty lonely and sometimes depressed because I have no one to tell my secrets or to help me solve my problems. I think that when you have a real friend and you lost it, I don't think you find another one like him. I tried to look for a person, but it's not that easy.
Boys are not only distraught about losing close friendships, they're also upset about not being able to say what they feel. Anthony, at 16 years old, says, "It might be nice to be a girl, because then you wouldn't have to be emotionless." There are, of course, consequences of living in a culture that silences boys' feelings and desires. Right at the ages of 15 or 16, as boys enter late adolescence and struggle to hold on to their close friendships, the suicide rate in the United States among boys rises dramatically. Late adolescence is also the time when boys are more likely to commit extreme acts of violence toward others. Elliot Rogers, who killed numerous people at UC Santa Barbara in 2014, indicated in a self-made video that he committed such an act as a result of, quote, humanity letting him rot in his own loneliness. So just as boys in my studies predicted, not having close friendships makes some boys go crazy. The problem, in other words, is not the nature of boys, but the culture in which they and we live. So what do we learn about boys from listening to boys? We learn not only that boys want, need, and in some cases have close male friendships, we also learn that close male friendships are critical for their mental health. We learn about the clash between modern culture, with its emphasis on independence, and human nature, with its emphasis on relationships. What's the solution? What if we reimagine boys as they see themselves and as we already know them to be? What if we normalize and value their human capacities and needs? What if we turn the phrase, boys will be boys, into boys are human too? What if we valued stereotypically feminine qualities as much as we value those deemed masculine? What if our culture nurtured our nature rather than got in the way? Yes, of course, boys, as well as all others, want to be autonomous, stoic, and win the basketball game. But they also want to share secrets with their friends, express their vulnerability, and not be pressured to laugh at a joke at their own expense. They want their insights into human nature and culture to be heard and valued. They want us to stop giving core human qualities like thinking and feeling, a gender, a sexuality, and even at times a race and a social class. They want us to see them as they see themselves. To help us start reimagining boys and men, here's a scene from an Atlanta Braves game last spring. If we reimagine boys and men to be who they are, rather than who they are supposed to be, we will free them, as well as everyone else, to see their own humanity and to see the humanity of others. Thank you very much.